Hello, everybody. So this is the Transgenda. I started this one, and the battery of my camera died, so I'm just gonna start it over instead of picking up where I left off on that one. Uh, but this is something that I kind of feel like is. Uh, I don't know if it needs to be said. It is one of those things that sometimes people are just. I don't want to say stupid, but it's kind of like the flat Earth thing. I mean, do you really need to take the time to argue with flat Earth people? I don't. I don't see that as a worthwhile thing. If people want to believe the Earth is flat, you know, let them. This is a little bit different because it does affect people. Um, the transgender thing is. I don't really know how it affects people. I would imagine that it would. I mean, it's not affecting me. I'm not. I don't have conspiracy theorists chasing me down, saying that I'm, you know, trying to ruin the world or anything like that. But I do feel like so. I don't. It's not necessarily that something needs to be said, but I do feel like maybe if these people, I don't call them conspiracy theorists because it's not necessarily a conspiracy theory. Not technically it is, I guess, but I think it's in a way it's a natural conclusion to draw. That when things that don't make sense start happening, you start looking for explanations, and for a lot of people, like the 2020 pandemic. I mean, a lot of that stuff didn't make sense, and so what people start doing, they start looking for explanations, and they tend to gravitate towards things that are someone's doing it on purpose, which I do myself all the time. Whenever I can't find something in my dwelling space, my first assumption is somebody came into my dwelling space and took it. And in some cases, they did it just to fuck with me, which is almost 100% of the time not the case. I ended up finding it somewhere where I just didn't think to look, or it was even in my hands or in my pocket. So with the transgender or the trans agenda, I think transgender might be a word I created. I'm not sure. Did I hear that somewhere else? Uh, does it need to be addressed? I don't know. I kind of feel like this might help. But yeah, it makes sense to me because I feel like I can see it from both perspectives. I feel like I can see it from the trans person's perspective and from the cis person's perspective. Uh, that I mean, because if you're trans and you see this kind of snowball effect where one person comes out as trans and then another comes out as trans and then another and another and another, it makes sense, right? Because if from my perspective, I lived 30 plus years in fear. I felt like it was not safe to be myself. I felt like if I were, I've said it in several videos now, that I felt like if I were to open up my soul and present it to the world, I would be rejected, uh, possibly attacked, ridiculed, humiliated, these sorts of things. Uh, and so I basically lived in fear. Why? Part of that was because I didn't see myself in the world. I lived in an alien world, a foreign world, a world that was in a way I felt almost not just alien but actually hostile. or is at least in contradiction to what I felt inside of myself. And for me, I probably would not be doing this right now had it not been for other trans people that I saw. Watching, not even just trans, but even like drag queens, things like RuPaul's Drag Race. If I had not seen that, maybe I might not even still be alive. And I'm not crediting RuPaul's Drag Race with saving my life because it's not just that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is there's more. It was Ranma One Half, the Japanese anime that I watched when I was a teenager, about a martial arts master who changes back and forth between a man and a woman. Things like that just kind of made it okay for me to be me. But for the first 20 years of my life, I lived basically in a world where it was not okay to be me. And so it makes sense from my perspective to see this snowball effect, to see this thing that just started. I don't want to say it just started, but it kind of, like I said, like one person came out, and then another, and then another, and another. And I would say that it's going to keep going that way. Uh, I've seen estimates of how many trans people there are in the world. I don't remember what it is, but in a way, to me, it doesn't matter because I would assume it's not accurate, and that's because if you had asked me 15 years ago if I was trans, I would have said no. And it's not just because I would have been denying it to you, I would have been denying it to myself. And that's kind of the catch. That's what I think the transgender people don't get. Uh, is that this is not, it might seem like a conspiracy because it just seems like where are all these trans people coming from? Uh, like, how is it possible that these people are just, you know, somebody's putting something in the water or something? But and if you haven't experienced that fear, if you don't know what it's like to be afraid to be yourself, then it wouldn't make sense to you probably. You wouldn't realize that it's not that trans people are just now all of a sudden coming into existence. They existed for years, for centuries, but they lived in societies where it wasn't okay to be trans. And when you look at societies where it was okay to be trans, you don't see like times when there weren't trans people. There were always trans people there. I shouldn't say always because I don't know that. But like when you look at Native American societies, some of them were okay with trans. A lot of them were, I guess, a lot. I don't know how many, what percentage. And some of them, they had trans people, but it wasn't a cool thing. The trans might get made fun of, but still, uh, it was it was more acceptable than it is in modern American society. In other areas of the world, in ancient Scandinavia and Siberia, being trans was people. It wasn't out of the ordinary for people. In ancient Rome and Greece, uh, it wasn't that unusual. And I'm not saying it was accepted or that it was cool, but in ancient Rome, you had an entire school of priests who lived as women, called the Gaeli priests, Galli. They weren't cool with the Romans that necessarily. I think what I read was that in ancient Rome, it was being effeminate was not considered a cool thing for a man. In some cases, I think the Gaeli priests were at one point they were kicked out or outlawed or whatever. It could be totally talking out my butt. Uh, so my point is that this isn't just like a new thing. It isn't. This isn't the modern day liberal just making up stuff, and this now all of a sudden it's taking off. This was something that's been around for centuries, and you know, it just it became suppressed. The if you look up the Hijra of India, I forget how to spell that one. I want to say Hijra. You'll read that they were prior to the British col- colonization, that they were highly esteemed. They were considered a kind of sacred part of society, that people would go to them for blessings. In some way, they were similar to the Gaeli priests. They would give blessings to children at their birth, stuff like that. Which I'm not saying the Gaeli priests did that, but they were part of the spiritual community. And when the British took over, the British came in there with their transphobic views, and the Hijra were basically shunned into hiding. And for a lot of Western civilization, it was the same way. That trans behavior was basically just shunned out of existence in a way. I'm sure it was always there, but that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that it was always there, and it just wasn't cool, you know. In the for my grandparents' generation, for my dad's generation, uh, dressing as a woman for a man was not a socially acceptable thing. So why would a man do that? Who would want to come out as trans in the 50s or 60s? It doesn't mean they weren't there. It just means that they were in hiding. It from a trans person's perspective, that to me, it seems obvious. I mean, it just seems like, of course they're not going to come out as trans. I wouldn't have come out as trans back then. Most likely, I would have just, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done if I lived back then. Part of the reason that I am out now is because of the society is slowly accepting it. If I lived in Afghanistan or Iraq or a place like that, I don't know how trans behavior is actually viewed over there. I'm making a total prejudice assumption at the moment, but I would probably not. I would probably would not be out. So who would know? Who over there would think, oh yeah, there's trans people all over the place over here. They wouldn't think that. They would think, yeah, we're all good, God-fearing people over here. We're all normal, heterosexual, cis, whatever. So, from, you know, maybe you don't believe that I am not a conspirator. I don't think of myself as a conspirator. I actually would like to be a conspirator. If I could work for the Illuminati, I think I probably would. But it wouldn't be to turn the world into transgender. Uh, Certainly not little kids. But what I probably would like is for little kids to feel safe, to be who they are, and not be like I was, being afraid of being rejected, being afraid of being harassed, ridiculed, shamed. Uh, that would be my agenda, you know. Uh, but certainly, and in a way, I do have a kind of confession that I do often look at people and think, are they a trans in suppression? Should I try to convert them? Especially famous people. Do I want to call out any names? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how far this video will go. I might get conspired against. But there are certain public figures who I have suspected are trans and maybe in denial, or they're suppressing their trans behavior. And I think maybe it might be better if I don't tell you, because sometimes the mystery is better. Uh, but I do, I see that as a bias. I see that as a desire. You know, when you join a religion, and I don't want to call transgender a religion, but when you join a religion that you're not totally sold on, you want other people to join too. You know, I've noticed that Christians do that. That they become a Christian and all of a sudden they want to convert everybody else. And as far as I can tell, that's because they want affirmation of their belief. They want other people to believe it so that they are stronger in their belief. Not, and that's because, you know, like it implies that they're not strong in their belief. That they're kind of like, what the fuck am I doing? And you know, and a part of them is just not entirely sold on it. And so the more people that they can convince that it's correct, the more secure they become in it. And what I'm saying is that's kind of how I view uh, my situation with being trans. That yeah, if more people come out as trans, the better it is for me. And my you know, if nobody was out as trans, I would be totally confused. As a kid, I didn't really know. I wouldn't have known what to do with thinking that I was a girl. Uh, I've mentioned in the video about how I came to the idea that I'm trans. That as a kid, the thought came to me once that I was a girl, and I dismissed it because I didn't know what to do with it. And if there were not trans people in the world, I don't think I would know what to do with it. So the more trans people that I meet, the more trans stories that I hear, the more it affirms my own experience. So I do have a bias. I do have a desire to not turn the world trans, but to see more people come out as trans. But I'm certainly not actively uh, trying to convert people. I'll put it that way. Uh, am I the devil? It's possible. It is entirely possible. Could I be Jesus?